Is Tom Russell. I'm your host for Life Without Limits. I'm coming back at you for one more week out of several weeks that I've been on the air, and I am so proud of what we've all accomplished and all the people that we've had on our show. In fact, what I want to start off the show thanking all those guests that I've had previous, and I realize that the kind of show that I have I tend to bring people on who have experienced some, a lot of times, traumatic situations in their life. But I like to also bring up the opportunity for them to explain how they were able to overcome their challenges in their life. And it's inspiring to me, it's refreshing to me because I don't have a guest who has problem after problem after problem and we can't get to a solution. And we're here to inspire other people that if they're going through the same thing or something similar, they can know that they're not alone. And these guests that I have, and particularly the guests I have tonight, Nichole Howson, she's gone through some things in her life, man. She's come out on the other end a champion, a victor, and that's why I have her on, and that's why I have other people on my show. But I connect with a lot of my guests I've had previous, and I stay in touch with them. And one person in particular, we talked about about her depression. And if you recall, Beth was been I don't know, it's been about a year, maybe longer. Beth Tweedy, she is seriously struggling again. She's bouncing back and forth, and I don't really talk too much about religion, but I think I would appreciate if people say prayers for Beth because it's really important that she's able to get through this last struggle, and it's important that she knows that there are other people who are on her side. And I just want to give a shout out to Beth. I don't know if she's able to listen to it tonight or not, but I just want to let her know that I'm thinking of her and I'm praying for her, and I'm hoping other people pray for her as well. So tonight I'm going to jump right in, and we're going to talk with Nichole Howson. She's from Windsor, Ontario, Canada, up north. And she's a social media manager and a strategist and a mental health advocate. She speaks about mental illness, specifically on mental wellness, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. She's been published 10 times for The Mighty and has been interviewed by CBC and CTV News. And she runs a mental health blog called Defying Shadows with 15 other mental health advocates. And the reason why I have her on the show, she was diagnosed as a teen with depression and anxiety, and later on with bipolar disorder at 20 and PTSD at 25. And Nichole strives to support those who struggle and destroy all stigma surrounding mental illness. And Nichole, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy when I set up these shows. We talk, sometimes it's 2 months ahead, and then we don't talk for until the day of the show. So we have a lot of catching up to do, Nichole. We really do.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to start talking about your life when you first started growing up. You grew up on a dairy farm. Was that a formative time in your life?
Um, I mean, living on a farm leaves its impact for sure. Uh, we were really family focused, and I think a lot of that stayed. Living on the farm, working on the farm. I'm not a farm kid. I run an online business, and I sit in front of a computer all day. But I learned what hard work looks like, living on the farm and working as a kid and as a teenager, and I think a lot of that stuck.
So when you started going into school, you noticed about your life that you started feeling sadness in your life that wasn't really normal for a lot of other kids. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. I had no idea it wasn't. normal per se. I just figured everybody was just silently miserable. Um, and there wasn't anything really wrong that was causing that. I just wasn't happy. I was having anxiety, and I didn't know how to manage it, and I didn't even know what it was. I just assumed everybody felt the same way as me, and I had no idea how to make sense of it. And I didn't know to ask for help because I didn't know that that was something that I could get help for.
Yeah, but didn't you notice, did your parents notice any of these characteristics about being sad?
Um, so I was the smiley kid in school. I was the happy, yeah. I was the I was the kid that was always came across really happy, and I was internally really sad. Um, but I always put on this really good face. Um, my parents would notice I'd have like meltdowns at home, and that sort of thing, but they just assumed it was just kind of part of who I was, I guess. It didn't really raise any red flags at all.
Now, I brought up talking about Beth with her depression, and from someone like me who really doesn't have an issue with sadness and everything, what's your thought process? I mean, because you know that you need to get out of this funk that you're in, but you don't know how,
Mhm.
or you don't know why you're in the funk. Can you explain how that mindset is, at least when you're a
Yeah,
kid?
yeah. I think as a kid, it was my default. I would be happy and go lucky and all the things, and then my default was just sadness. And so that's kind of where it was. I've done a lot of reading on neuroplasty and how you can rewire your brain and your thought processes, and it makes sense that because that was just how I was continually thinking, it was my default. And then it takes over time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but you can rewire your brain to go back into a different mindset. So it's taken a lot of work, but that's what I've been working on.
Well, yeah, as an adult, it's a little bit easier to know that you have to rewire your brain. But as a kid growing up, you know, the parents try, and then I don't know. At what point did you decide that, or your parents decide that you needed to actually see somebody about this, about your depression?
I was a teenager when we finally um, I saw a doctor at that point. And she had diagnosed me with anxiety and depression.
And how did you respond to that?
I was raised in a very Christian household, so I decided I was going to pray it away.
Mhm.
That was my mindset. Not really the best option. I mean, I totally 100% believe in prayer and all of that. But sometimes you need extra help that isn't that. And so I didn't really seek any help. I just thought I kind of internalized it. And I'm a bad Christian because I'm sad. So that was not helpful in any way, but that was the kind of the start of when I had a name for what was going on, and I started to realize that it's not normal to be constantly feeling those feelings.
But how did you get through that? Because I mean, you said you were going to pray it away, and that you probably weren't convicted, right? Praying like that because you didn't
Mhm.
believe it. You didn't believe that God was going to get you through this. You just said this is what's going to have to be. I mean, at what point did you decide that you needed to take that one extra step, that you needed to heal yourself?
I lived with it until I was, let's say I was 18. And I had on and offs where I was okay for a little bit, and then the depression would get really bad again. And I ended up having what we now know to be a manic episode from bipolar disorder. But I packed up my whole life. I burned bunch of bridges and moved to the other side of the province, and kind of threw everything up in the air to see what would happen. And I thought I was doing the right thing, but we didn't realize is that I was actually really sick, and it was me trying to get help in a way that nobody really saw or understood because we didn't know what it was.
So you just said you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Did you move before or after you found out you had that?
Before, so a year before I was diagnosed, and I moved to Belleville. I struggled quite a bit while I was up there and saw different therapists and different things. They tried different medications. And then I got to a point where I just didn't think I could do it anymore. And so I went to the hospital. I asked for help. They sent me home. And that happened far too many times for my liking, or for most people's liking, as I tell the story. But I ended up getting to the point where I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So I attempted suicide. And I made it through.
Yeah,
but
obviously.
it was at that point that they called my parents and asked them to come and get me. The hospital I was at didn't have the resources to take care of me. And so they literally had my parents come and pick me up. And my parents drove me home. And kudos to my parents because I put them through so much. And they just totally accepted me back in and didn't even flinch. They were like, "Yeah, no, we're coming to get you. We're going to take care of you."
Were you worried about that? Whether they wouldn't accept you back?
Oh, 100%. I was convinced that was going back home wasn't an option. I really thought they'd never want anything to do with me again.
Explain for those my audience who might not know what bipolar disorder is. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so bipolar disorder is a mood disorder. It's not like depression is a chemical imbalance in your brain, whereas bipolar disorder is it's not based off of a chemical imbalance. There's no real way to like test it. You can't get a brain scan or something and be like, oh yeah, they have bipolar disorder. So there's a whole lot of like specific things that you have to look for in a person, but essentially, if you've had a manic episode, then you very likely have bipolar disorder. And obviously, I don't want to diagnose anybody, so talk to your own doctors. But
Right.
that was kind of what raised the question as to whether or not I was. And after hearing my story, and I talked to a psychiatrist in the hospital, and after she heard everything, she got down in front of me, and I couldn't make eye contact. I was just so embarrassed and defeated. And she came up and she got down right in front of me, and she made eye contact with me, and she said, "This is not your fault." And it was like just a wave of relief that somebody was like, "Hey, you know what? This isn't your fault. You didn't do this." And knowing that and having somebody real like say that was everything I needed in that moment, because I didn't feel like I had any control over the things that I had done, and obviously I did them, so I have to own up to my mistakes. But it wasn't me that was doing it; it was my bipolar disorder, and so having somebody be able to like separate that for me and make me realize that bipolar disorder isn't my identity. It's just something that's happening. It was a huge thing.
Now, I had a pastor who had bipolar disorder, and for a pastor to have that, they're laying out there every day, every Sunday. You can see the patterns. He was going through a lot of different medications, trying to figure out what was best for him. But his highs were high, and his lows were low, and we were witness to both of them. What was more prevalent for you, the highs or the lows?
The lows for sure. Looking back, we can see a lot of the lows. There's a few times that we saw some highs, But I've had one major manic episode, was when I moved to Belleville in 2013, and came home in 2014. That was the defining moment that helped us realize that I have bipolar disorder.
With with my pastor, he was taking different meds, but you told me that it's supposed to balance your chemistry, right? That's the whole idea about doing this. But you couldn't take meds. Why is that?
Yeah, so they were trying to treat the depression originally, which, for somebody with bipolar disorder, if you're taking an antidepressant, can actually cause a manic episode, if it's not taken with a mood stabilizer. So they didn't know that, so they gave me the antidepressant, thinking I was depressed, and then it caused another manic episode instead of taking care of the depression. So for a few days, I was like, I'm good. And then I crashed, um, and then I wasn't good. And so knowing that, when I got the diagnosis, we changed the medication I was on for sure. And I am on an antidepressant now, but it's partnered with other medication that's going to stabilize my mood.
Yeah, because I'm looking at you because the thing with bipolar disorder, I guess any mental illness, you're looking at someone, you don't have a clue what they're going through, whether it's mental illness or whatever it is. How do you talk to someone trying to explain this is what I'm going through, and I mean, do people say just get over it? All these insane things that people say to people just to say because they don't understand. Did you go through that a lot?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm lucky in the sense that when I was diagnosed, my parents threw themselves into educating. We explained it to my siblings, that I'm still me, but I was sick, and so I have to take medication. My sister did this thing. She wears glasses just like me, but she took her glasses off and she's like, "So, really? Nicole's medication is like your glasses. She can't see properly without them, but as soon as she puts them on, everything is good again." We're like, yes, that's exactly it.
Mm.
So my internal circle was really, really great. Amazingly enough, a lot of my friends, they have their own mental health issues, so they get it. So we can all kind of support each other that way. Um, but there's still, for sure, random people that will make their way into my newsfeed or whatever, and we'll go with the get over it, or it's not that bad, or somebody else has it worse, or whatever they want to say in the moment. That's just not helpful.
Now you said that when we first talked, you said that you attempted suicide twice. Was it
Yes.
so when you did, was it how much longer? How do I say this? You did it one the first time. When did it happen again?
Yeah, so I attempted the first time, and then they released me the next morning, which is not supposed to happen. It never should have happened, but they released me. So I went home and I attempted a second time, and it was at that point that they called my parents and asked them to come and get.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I'm not sure why anybody would try to even think that to do that. Because I've had some people on my show that uh, were going through some similar situations, circumstances, and they
Mhm.
didn't get the right treatment. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um, and you said you talked to your therapist. Which when the therapist finally told you that it wasn't your fault, how did that change your life?
Yeah, finding out that I really had no control over what I was feeling or what I was doing, and made everything so much more sense. There's I forget where I shared it, but I shared it recently, a story about myself when I was younger, and I remember that day so vividly, and I was just miserable, throwing things and screaming and crying and everything, because my mom asked me to clean, and help with chores.
Oh, I can't
Um,
believe that.
right?
Uh,
So the nerve. So I ended up having just throwing a temper tantrum, and I was far too old to be throwing a temper tantrum. And she warned me. I had a birthday party with a friend later in the day, and she warned me, and she said, if you don't stop, there will be no party tonight. And I just kept going, and she warned me a second time. She gave me one last chance, and I remember looking in the mirror at myself and going, you gotta stop this. She's not gonna let you go to that party. Like, we need to chill out. We're fine. What's going on? And then literally walked away from the mirror and just blew up. And I remember thinking to myself, I have no control over this. But who's going to believe somebody, like, I think I was probably 12 at the time, a 12-year-old to say, I have no control over this? Nobody would have really understood what that meant. And I didn't really understand it either. So, like, stuff like that from my childhood and my teenage years, all of it, as soon as she was like, this is not your fault, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I needed to hear.
I don't like to talk about myself, but I can relate because I was angry and impatient, and I always got ticked off. I used to tell everybody I quit, and out of anger all the time. And one day we were camping somewhere, and I said I quit, and my mom said, what are you quitting? And I said, being your son. And instead of them saying, "Oh no, you can't say that," or "That's really bad to say," they all laughed at me, which is the worst thing they could do. And I ran into the room, I pouted and everything like that, and they were still laughing at me. And I realized at that point, that was not the right tack to go, because it was just, no one's gonna. It's like crying wolf. You say quit all the time, and then they're just gonna say, "Okay, just go off and do what you want to do." And I put my fist through the front door window and my fist through the back door window out of anger. And I'd always scream, and just like you did, scream and holler. And one day my brother, I just started ranting about something. My brother took me by my arms and shook me and started screaming at me and ranting and raving and all that sort of stuff. And then he stopped and he said, "There, that's what you look like." And I was like 12 years old, and I'm decades later, I still remember that scene. And I think it's real important to let other people know that how people view you based on your behavior. And I'm certain that you went through the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, so when you're going through these episodes, can you tell me what your thought process, or you think about?
Through my manic episode?
Yeah, through your manic episodes, when you start talking about that, or when you start thinking about that, do you feel like, hey, I'm going through a manic episode? This is how I'm feeling right now. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I am very self-aware at this point. So I can tell when I'm not okay. And I'm very vocal about it. So I will tell people when I'm not okay. And usually I catch it right away. But there's some telltale signs that will come up. If I start thinking that everybody's out to get me, um, then that's usually a sign that, okay, maybe I should check in with myself on what's going on, because usually people aren't out to get me. And I get this just like this actual feeling that I feel like everything's going way too fast and I'm getting dizzy. And that feeling is what I associate with a manic episode. And so when I start to feel that way, I always take a step back and like, okay, what's going on? Have I been sleeping? What have I like? Have I been eating properly, or going through my checklist of like, am I taking care of myself and what's missing, to make sure that I am okay.
Um, One sec here.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading something that you wrote and I lost it. Um, One second here. You were talking about that, rechecking yourself, and you wrote something that I thought was so interesting of self-reflection, and I am going to find it here. I'm here. Let me look for it. While I'm looking for it, Nichole, for those who are going through similar situations, can you give some advice what to do aside from getting therapy?
Yeah. Check in with yourself first. See if you can figure out where you're at. Find somebody that's really supportive, who's not going to shame you for your feelings, and talk to them. If you feel like you are in danger in any way, then absolutely reach out to a crisis center or the hospital or something. Get that help. If you want to learn more about it, there's different mental health services that you can reach out to. Those would be my go-tos.
What about the parents? I mean, if the parents are watching their kids going through this, what do you suggest?
So if we could do a redo, and my parents and I have talked about this, if we could do a redo, my parents would have been, um, we would have talked about it a lot more. We would have shared, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through. And having that conversation can help kind of get an idea as to where they actually are. Having that safe space that you can go talk to your parents is huge. So if you can make that space possible, telling them to get over it or whatever else is not going to support them in any way or help them.
Mhm. All right, Nichole, I found this. I found it finally. And this is what she posted on Instagram. I thought that was so cool. And I'm going to read it to you. She says, this is my selfish year. This is my get my crap together year. This is my self-care year. This is my level up year. This is my you've changed year. A month ago, I told my business coach, I want to be able to post on social media in a month from now and say, if you knew me a month ago, you don't. I wanted to grow so drastically that it was noticeable. I'm sitting here reflecting this morning, and I think parts of me have changed. I had 3 people tell me over the weekend that I have changed. My boundaries changed. My mindset changed. My reactions changed. Sure, there are still parts of me that revert back to that girl I was a month ago, but this girl has a plan. This girl is taking care of myself. This girl is just a girl, isn't just a girl anymore. She's a bad bleep CEO. She's growing and changing. She's becoming the person she always wanted to be. That is so cool because it's so reflective of how you are now, which is where we're going to go right now. Because we've talked enough about bipolar disorder and all this sort of stuff. You've moved on. You've decided that you wanted to become a social media manager. Talk about how that transpired.
Yeah, so I became a social media manager because of my bipolar disorder.
Mm.
I needed a job that I could do from home. I was waiting for school to start in January, and I didn't think that I could work a 9 to 5. And if I'm being honest, I probably couldn't have handled it at that point in my recovery. But put it out on Kijiji, which is Canadian version of Craigslist. Not how I recommend people get clients, but that's how I got my first client. They were in the US and in the UK. They were so much fun to work with. And so I started off with them and I landed a few more clients as I went through school. And by the time I graduated, I had enough clients that it didn't make sense to shut it down and go work for an agency. So I just made a go of it. So that was 7 years ago now.
7 years ago. So, how were you internally when you were doing this? Because I saw another post in there, and again, I have to revert back to, I'm not going to go to what you wrote, but you said that you worked so hard, 24/7, constantly, and you came to the determination that why in the heck am I putting myself through this? Because I'm not getting the clients that I want. I'm not seeing the results that I want. I'm personally, internally, and health-wise, I'm sucking, because I'm sucking wind and it's not working. What did you do to change?
Yeah, setting boundaries was really big. So I actually, back in 2019, I was hospitalized for my mental health. And one of the things that we talked about was how can I prevent this from happening again? What things am I doing to take care of myself? And the whole time I was in the hospital, all I could think about was I need to get back out so I can go to work. And that was where my mindset was, not, oh my gosh, I should take care of myself and get better at all the things. So it was really interesting to see where my priorities were. So one of the boundaries that we set in place was that I don't work after 6 p.m. anymore. And at 6 p.m., I shut my computer down. I don't work on client work or respond to emails or any of that. And I focus specifically on myself and take care of myself and self-care and being with my family. And as soon as I started doing that, amazing things happened. My business completely exploded. I have more clients now than I ever have because I was taking care of myself first.
I should take stock from that. I really should. You know, well, this radio show is a little bit different because I can't really, if I connect with somebody and it's after hours, I don't have a choice because I have to connect with them at that time. You know, and kudos to you, Nichole, because you just said 6 o'clock I shut down, and here it is 9:30, and you're still awake, and you haven't yawned one bit. I'm really proud of you for doing that.
I'm super proud of myself.
Yeah, that's good. So in 2019, you know, you've gone through this transformation and everything. Do you kind of feel that you can handle any episodes a little bit better now?
I feel like I am more equipped to handle them. They're gonna suck.
Mm.
It's not gonna be fun. It's not gonna be easy. But I now know how to take care of myself during that time, and I know what resources I have and things that I can do to take care of myself. Um, so I'm not scared of it happening anymore because it very much is very likely going to happen. And I can't control that. But I can control taking care of myself. And that's what I've been really focusing on.
Now you've put yourself out here, obviously. I mean, you're on my show tonight, and I think you've done other podcasts. You talk about the mental health issue and all this sort of stuff. You know, when you start talking with your clients, you know, how do your clients react to all this?
They're all super supportive. I don't necessarily bring it up to them, but a lot of them are on my social media or they find me. So they're gonna
Right.
know. I was a little bit nervous when I first started being vocal about it that it was going to affect my business. And I made a post essentially with that saying that. And it was interesting to see how many people came to me and said, I would like to work with you specifically because you're being vocal about your mental health. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are the kind of people I want to work with. So I just made a decision at that point that if somebody doesn't want to work with me because of my mental health, they probably weren't the right fit for me anyway. And I'm going to focus on working with the people that do want to support me and allow me to support them.
So, what do you actually do with your business? When you say clients, what does the business do?
Yeah, so we help businesses and brands with their online marketing. So creating social media content for them, managing their social media. Business owners are busy, and the last thing they want to be doing is responding to Facebook comments or creating a post to go out on the weekend. They want to just work on their business and then hopefully have a little bit of a life of their own. So that's what we do for our clients is we provide that. We do email marketing as well, and a bunch of other stuff, video editing and all fun things. I have a team of 17 now, which is so mind-blowing because a year ago it was just me, but we my team's amazing and we love our clients.
Do you ever feel like you've gotten in over your head?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think there's been 3 times in the last 2 weeks that I was like, what have I done? Uh, Things scale really fast. But then it's always that taking the step back and going, okay, what are my priorities? What am I taking care of myself? Where are my boundaries and that sort of thing? I think I will always have that feeling, but when I think about it, then I can say, okay, you know what? This is where I'm at. So, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed. This is what I'm going to do to prevent that from happening any further, or this is what I'm going to do to take care of my stress level right now.
Now, people go through stress all the time, right? I mean, but your situation is you don't want to have that stress kind of trigger you to go into some kind of manic episode. You're taking the medication, but I mean, how do you balance that, knowing that there quite possibly could something happen that you're just going to blow up?
Lots and lots and lots of therapy. I talk to my therapist every week. She's amazing. Sometimes we don't really have anything to talk about, but she's there. And I've been at this for 7 years. I'm still learning random things that I can do and journal. I'm not a journaler, but I have been doing that just to make my therapist, my coach happy. We have they're teaching me all of these things, and I'm like, okay, there's so much more that I could be doing now because of it.
Now you're doing a blog though, right? I mean, you're still doing the blog. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Defying Shadows was kind of it was my passion project for quite a while. Originally I had started writing my stories of when I was a teenager, or my mental health stories, as a way of dealing with it for myself, and trying to articulate. I just said I'm not a journaler, but I process by writing. So a lot of my content is a blog post or a social media post, and that's why you'll find very deep or very personal posts on my social media, because I don't put them in a journal. I put them on Facebook. Yeah, that blog started off, it was just me writing some stories, and then I reached out to other mental health advocates that were going through similar struggles or struggles of their own, and we all just joined forces. And we're not doing a whole lot with it right now, but it's still up there, and I don't think I'll ever take it down, because I think there's a lot in there that people can use.
How does my audience find out about it?
It's defyingshadows.com.
Defyingshadows.com. Okay. Are you currently still doing it, or is you just had blogs there for a while and just you've moved out of it a little bit?
I've taken a step back. It was a very hard decision, but it's still there.
And how do people reach you?
They can find me on any of my social media at Nichole Howson. My usernames are all my first and last name. So
now remember, Nichole is spelled Nichole. Last name is Howson, Howson. So I understand people misspell my name. They make Russell made out of one L rather than two L's. But trying to make sure that you spell Nichole's name correctly. And I can personally understand what that's all about. Now, how old are you now?
27. I had to think about that.
You're 27. You're way young right now to feel like you've accomplished the pinnacle of your life. When you look back at how you've grown up, do you feel kind of amazed that you are where you are right now?
Absolutely. I remember when I was really, really young and I wanted to be on talk shows and share my story and tell everybody about how I overcame everything I went through. I haven't been invited to a talk show yet, but I mean, I do podcasts like this, and that's everything for me. Being able to share my story and then be able to say, you know what, I have actually come out of this, and I am successful now, and you can be too. That's everything that I want to tell everybody all the time.
Yeah, it's hard to get out of your head sometimes, because I kind of feel like I've been doing this show for 2 years, and I don't feel like I've reached the pinnacle of where I wanted to go. And I would imagine you kind of feel the same way with yourself. Is you kind of have to have the mindset, I've done this, but what's next? Because if you don't have that what next attitude, you're just going to languish in obscurity and just feel like mediocrity is the way your life is going to be. And I can tell, Nichole, you are not that kind of person. Is there a certain drive that you feel like you have to prove something?
I don't think so. I think for a while I was like, oh, I have to be successful. I have to do this. I have to do that. And I had like my revenue goals in mind of how much I wanted to make in a month. And ironically, last Friday I hit that number, and now I'm like, awesome. Okay, but now what? Um, that it seemed like so far now I'm like, okay, yeah, but what else can I do? And loving my life and everything that's happening. And I don't think I was literally listening to an audiobook this morning. It was talking about how we should always push ourselves to be better and to learn more and all the things, but to be satisfied with where we're at as well. And I think that 100% describes where I'm at. I love my business and my clients and my team members and my life in general. But I'm so ready to continue working on myself and become even better.
We always, I'm 59. Man, I'm going to be 60 in January. That just tries my mind. But we all like to think that if I were to able to go back and tell my, 10-year-old self, my 15-year-old self, what to do to change your life, what would you say about your life?
That's a really good question. I think being able to say like it does get better. People used to say it to me all the time. It's gonna get better. I'm like, yeah, sure. You think that,
Yeah,
but I didn't believe it.
yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, it actually. So I don't know how. I know saying it probably wouldn't help, but to be able to prove and be like, no, it really is. It's gonna be better. I think that would be the best gift that I could have given myself at that point.
Yeah, knowing where you are right now, uh, I mean, I'm watching you now, Nichole, and just the smile on your face is just beaming, and I can see the joy in your face and the exuberance in your voice and everything. Do you kind of feel like what you went through before growing up with all the mental issues and all like that? Do you think that you needed to have that to be where you are right now?
I think it made me who I am for
Hmm.
sure. Like I never would have even started my business if I hadn't had my suicide attempts. All of that kind of crafted who I am. The path that I thought I was going to be on is not anywhere close to being where I am now, and I couldn't be happier for it.
And I think with a lot of the guests that I've had is the same. I guess they feel the same way because they everything that they went through, all the challenges and trauma and tragic things that happened in their life, it helped mold them. That they refuse to go back to where they were before because it just it's non-productive. And I'm simply amazed at the transformation that you and everybody else that I've had on the show, because they just refuse to give up on themselves. And Nichole, I am so proud of you for what you've accomplished with your life and how you were able to uh, get out of your situation and in fact inspire other people, because that's the key. Because even though you don't feel it sometimes, I know you are. Just by you being on my show, because I know I have an audience here that, it's a worldwide audience. There are other people going through similar struggles. And just to have you here to tell people your story and to let other people know that they can, with the right help and with the right mindset, you can accomplish just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. Um, I think that's about it. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's always fun. I enjoy talking to you because you just bring joy for me. Because I just like I said, just to see you smile, it's just you need to keep smiling and let inspire other people. I appreciate that. Um, just to let you know, folks, next week it's going to be 4th of July weekend. I am actually going to be taking a break for the week, but and so there will be another repeat of one of my shows. but I promise you it's going to be one of my more impactful shows. So I'm hoping that you can come back and listen to it and learn something else from the guests that I have there. And then the following week, I'm going to come back to a new show with a new guest, and and I'm trying to think here. I've lost track. Anyway, there's going to be some another guest in here is going to be similar to what Nichole's story was. So as I end all of my shows, I want everyone to smile infectiously, laugh genuinely, love unconditionally, and live courageously. And I've been, from the very first day that I've had the show over 2 years ago, I've ended the show with those four sayings. And each time I do this, I say it with conviction because honestly, I believe all those four things that I talk about are key to find happiness in your life, but you have to live it, you have to breathe it, you have to have it totally ingrained in you to live by those four principles. Because if you don't, you're going to be languishing in pain because you can't take your you can't take your eyes off yourself and onto someone else, and I think that's real important. And I guess I need to add something that I don't like to praise myself or whatever, but I just want to tell you what happened this weekend, and then I'll end with this. My wife and I went to a little drive-in. We went to visit someone. We went to a drive-in, and we saw this uh, girl at the drive-in. She was all by herself, and she was running back and forth between all the cars and everything. And it was crazy to watch, and I felt so bad for her. But every time she would go with the customer, she had this bright, wide smile on her face and thanking the customer and every single person like this. And she got to us, and we were just floored because even though she was just going everywhere, she took care of us, and we had a nice conversation. And she continued to do this. And frequently, what I do is, if I see someone who is excelling in what they're doing and they're showing enthusiasm, I'll write a little note. And I told her that I said, and Nichole would understand this, is I wrote, attitude is your choice. You can either languish in feeling that you're being wronged and you have this negative attitude, or you can turn that into positive. And I said, this is who you are. And it's not because of the job that you're doing, it's because how you are inside. Because you realize that it's never about the money. It's always about how you are individually inside yourself, and it shows. And I wrote this, and I gave the note to her, and I drove away. And I didn't want a response from her or anything like that. I just wanted to give this to her to let her know that she was special. And in that note, I wrote those four principles. And I believe in those principles more than anything I've ever done in my life is those four principles. So and I hope that everybody listens to my show every week to listen to those, and they take it to heart. So this is all I can tell you right now. I said I believe in you, and I hope you have a fantastic week.